I've had many happy moments in my life, yes. I don't think happiness, being happy is a perpetual state that anyone can be in.
The classic Grace Kelly red carpet moment, she broke down in tears. So the Ice Princess thawed out a little bit.
Grace Kelly had married Prince Rainier, and I went over to Monaco to do that only interview, and it was very hard for her.
She thought she was marrying a prince. Instead, she got a monster. Grace Kelly's husband burned her movie scripts, called her career whorish, and forced her to take a fertility test before saying, "I do." His first demand was a $2 million payment just to marry her. When she tried to return to Hollywood, he humiliated her in front of the entire world. By 1966, Grace was secretly meeting with divorce lawyers until she discovered the horrible truth about Monaco's custody laws. The real story of their marriage will leave you speechless. Grace Kelly was born on November 12, 1929, into a family where success was everything. Her father, Jack Kelly, was a three-time Olympic gold medalist in rowing. No one had ever done that before in the sport. He wasn't just an athlete. He was also a multimillionaire in the bricklaying business and a well-known figure in Philadelphia politics. In 1935, he even ran for mayor. But despite all his achievements, he never forgot how people looked down on him for being Irish Catholic. When the Henley Royal Regatta in England refused to let him compete, he saw it as an insult. That rejection fueled his determination to prove himself. Grace's mother, Margaret, was just as ambitious. She was the first woman to coach women's athletics at the University of Pennsylvania. She helped create opportunities for female athletes in basketball, gymnastics, swimming, and tennis. Later, she became a leader in civic organizations and pushed for better facilities for women. Through her German ancestry, Grace had distant connections to European nobility, including the Stauffenberg family. Grace grew up with three siblings, Peggy, John Jr., and Lizanne. In their family, sports were everything. Peggy and John Jr. thrived in that world. John Jr. even became an Olympic rower and later served as president of the U.S. Olympic Committee. Grace was different. She was quieter, more delicate, and uninterested in competition. Her father had no patience for that. He adored Peggy and often said she was better than Grace in every way. Within the family, Grace was called the ugly duckling. That nickname stung. It made her feel like she didn't belong. She spent a lot of time alone, lost in daydreams. In her imagination, she wasn't the overlooked daughter in a family of athletes. She was someone important, a princess, a star. But in real life, she was stuck in a strict Catholic household with rules she didn't want to follow. Her father's approval seemed impossible to earn, so she stopped trying. She started sneaking out to smoke cigarettes. She went on secret dates with older men. She wasn't loud about her rebellion, but it was there. Grace's real passion was acting. But in her father's eyes, that was not a respectable career. When she performed in school plays at Stevens School, he dismissed it as a waste of time. He even made a cruel remark that stuck with her for years. He said acting was a slim cut above streetwalker. That hurt. But instead of backing down, she decided to prove him wrong. At 19, Grace moved to New York City and enrolled at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. She knew her father wouldn't support her, so she paid for school herself. She took modeling jobs, cigarette ads, shampoo commercials, anything that paid. A single ad could earn her between $7.50 and $25 per hour, the equivalent of $150 to $525 today. The jobs weren't glamorous, but they gave her independence. At the academy, she worked harder than anyone. Her teachers doubted her. One of them said she didn't have enough vocal horsepower. She refused to accept that. She trained for hours, lowering her voice and developing the smooth, elegant tone that would later make her famous. Broadway was not welcoming. Casting directors told her she was too tall, her jawline too strong. When she finally got a role in Strindberg's The Father, the reviews were disappointing. It felt like she had reached a dead end. But then, she got a screen test for Taxi. She didn't get the part, but the test landed in the hands of director John Ford. He saw something special in her. He thought she had a rare combination of beauty, class, and intelligence. She played all kinds of roles. In The Rockingham Tea Set, 1950, she was a nurse companion accused of murder. In The Kill, 1952, she played a frontier wife in a brutal drama about survival. These were not easy parts. Live television was unpredictable, and every performance had to be perfect. Kelly quickly built a reputation as an actress who could handle the pressure. Director Delbert Mann, who worked with her often, said she became part of an unofficial stock company of actors producers knew they could count on. Most of these live broadcasts were never recorded. So much of Kelly's work from this time is lost, but people remembered her. By 1953, she had done more live television than almost any actress of her generation. Hollywood was paying attention. Directors saw an actress who could take direction, perform under pressure, and make even the smallest role feel real. That reputation helped her land early film roles in 14 Hours, 1951, and High Noon, 1952. It also meant the end of her modeling career. She was all in on acting, but not everyone supported the roles she chose. In 1952, she played a prostitute in an episode of Studio One called The Kill. The story followed a man being hunted by his neighbors, with Kelly playing his wife, a woman with a troubled past. It was a risky role. Television at the time rarely touched on themes like sex work or moral ambiguity, and Kelly's conservative Catholic family in Philadelphia was not happy about it. But Kelly defended her decision. She wanted to show that she could take on difficult and complex roles. Critics praised her performance, and it proved she was more than just a pretty face. She could bring depth to any character. That same willingness to take risks would later lead her to roles like The Country Girl, 1954, where she played the weary wife of an alcoholic and won an Academy Award. But before that, she had another big career decision to make. In 1953, she was offered the lead female role in On the Waterfront, a film directed by Elia Kazan. It was a major opportunity. The film went on to win 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. The role she was offered eventually went to Eva Marie Saint, who won an Oscar for it. But Kelly turned it down. Instead, she chose to star in Mogambo, an adventure film directed by John Ford and set in Africa. Her co-stars were Clark Gable and Ava Gardner. It was a gamble. On the Waterfront was a gritty drama with serious awards potential. Mogambo was a sweeping romance about a love triangle in the jungle. But Kelly believed the character of Linda Nordley, a reserved woman caught between duty and desire, gave her more room to explore her acting skills. The risk paid off. Her performance earned her a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress and her first Oscar nomination. Critics praised the way she played off Gardner's fiery presence with quiet intensity, making the love story even more compelling. That choice led to one of the most famous partnerships in Hollywood history, Grace Kelly and Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock had been watching Kelly for years. He saw something in her that few others did. She was elegant, but there was a mystery beneath the surface. She seemed calm and in control, but there was a quiet intensity that made her fascinating to watch. He believed that made her the perfect leading lady. He cast her in Dial M for Murder, 1954, and the collaboration was an instant success. But it was Rear Window that made Kelly his ultimate Hitchcock blonde. In the film, she played Lisa Fremont, a glamorous socialite who takes matters into her own hands when she suspects a neighbor of murder. She was stylish and sophisticated, but she was also fearless. Hitchcock worked closely with costume designer Edith Head to craft her image. Every dress, every accessory was chosen to reflect her character. She could go from a high society dinner party to climbing into a suspect's apartment without missing a beat. Hitchcock's fascination with Kelly continued. He cast her again in To Catch a Thief, 1955, pairing her with Cary Grant in a sleek, romantic thriller set in the French Riviera. By now, Kelly had fully embraced her role as Hitchcock's leading lady. He often said that blondes were more surprising on screen because their cool exteriors made moments of passion or danger more unexpected. Kelly embodied that idea perfectly. Grace Kelly's time with MGM was not always smooth. During the making of The Swan in 1956, she clashed with the studio over the role of Princess Alexandra. She turned it down at first, calling the script too dull. MGM did not take rejection lightly. They suspended her, making it clear they were still in control. The situation was almost poetic. The film told the story of a woman preparing for a royal marriage, just as Kelly was about to become Princess of Monaco. MGM was not about to let her go that easily. They convinced her to take the role by linking the film's release to her wedding on April 18, 1956. It was a clever strategy that turned The Swan into more than just a movie. It became part of a global event, but Kelly never felt strongly about it. She later admitted it was one of her least memorable performances. By then, she was no longer just another actress under contract. She had negotiated better deals and refused to be controlled by studio executives. Her decision to leave Hollywood soon after finishing The Swan was more than just a career move. It was the end of an era for MGM, marking the loss of one of its biggest stars. Her final film, High Society, was the perfect farewell. It was a musical remake of the Philadelphia Story, released in 1956. She played Tracy Lord, a wealthy socialite caught between two men, starring alongside Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. The film became MGM's highest-grossing release that year, proving Kelly's star power one last time. Grace Kelly met Prince Rainier III on May 6, 1955, but it wasn't by chance. Their introduction was planned as a publicity stunt during the Cannes Film Festival. Kelly, already an Academy Award-winning actress, was in France promoting The Country Girl under the sponsorship of MGM Studios. Paris match editor Pierre Galante and actress Olivia de Havilland arranged for her to visit the prince's palace in Monaco for a photo session. For Rainier, this meeting was more than just good press. He needed a wife. Without an heir, Monaco risked being absorbed into France under an existing treaty. He had been in a relationship with actress Gisèle Pascal for years, but it ended after reports claimed she was infertile. The stakes were high. The meeting almost didn't happen. A power outage in Cannes forced Kelly to style herself in a simple floral dress with an improvised updo. On the way to the palace, her car was in a minor accident, delaying her arrival. Still, the meeting went ahead. Photographers captured the moment Rainier greeted Kelly with a handshake. Later, he gave her a tour of the palace, showing off his private zoo, which she found charming. At the time, Kelly was dating French actor Jean-Pierre Aumont. When asked about Rainier afterward, she described him as charming, but didn't say much else. 7 months later, Rainier traveled to Philadelphia to visit the Kelly family during Christmas. By the end of his trip, he had proposed. Their engagement wasn't just about romance. Before the wedding, Kelly was required to take a fertility test. Rainier's previous heartbreak with Pascal had made this a condition of marriage. The test was done privately at a sanitarium near Philadelphia, far from her deeply religious family. Then came the issue of the dowry. Royal tradition required Kelly's family to provide $2 million. Her father, John B. Kelly Sr., a wealthy businessman, was furious. He called it ridiculous and refused to pay. In the end, Grace covered half the amount herself, using money from her acting career. MGM also contributed in exchange for exclusive rights to film and broadcast the wedding. Kelly had doubts. She wrote to her mother before the wedding, admitting she felt like she was signing her life away. Giving up acting meant giving up a career she loved. She had spent years working her way to the top of Hollywood, and now she had to walk away, but there was no turning back. On April 18, 1956, Kelly and Rainier married in a civil ceremony inside Monaco's throne room. It lasted only 15 minutes, but a formal recitation of her new royal titles stretched for 25 minutes. She wore a pale pink taffeta dress with cream-colored Alençon lace, designed by Helen Rose, an MGM costume designer. The next day, the grand religious ceremony took place at St. Nicholas Cathedral. It was broadcast live to 30 million viewers. Kelly's wedding gown, also designed by Helen Rose, became one of the most iconic in history. It took 30 seamstresses 6 weeks to make, using 125-year-old lace from Brussels, thousands of hand-sewn pearls, and over 400 yards of fabric. The high neckline and 3-foot train would inspire future royal wedding dresses for decades. Over 600 guests attended, including Hollywood legends Cary Grant and Ava Gardner, along with European aristocrats and world leaders. Hollywood had played a big role in her life. But after the wedding, Rainier made sure her acting career was over. He banned all of her films from being shown in Monaco. This was ironic, considering he had been drawn to her fame in the first place. He knew marrying a Hollywood star would put Monaco on the world stage and attract global attention. MGM capitalized on the moment. Kelly's final film, High Society, was released just before the wedding to take advantage of the publicity. It was her farewell to acting. Unlike other stars who retired and later returned, her departure was final. Grace Kelly's marriage to Prince Rainier III of Monaco seemed like a dream. A Hollywood actress becoming a real-life princess. A wedding watched by millions. A palace by the sea. But the dream didn't last. Just weeks after their wedding in April 1956, Rainier reportedly started seeing other women. Not just one, but 3 mistresses within the first month. He didn't try to hide it. He brought them to palace events, humiliating Grace in front of Monaco's elite. The betrayal became even more painful when Grace became pregnant with their first child. Princess Caroline was born in January 1957, but instead of celebrating, Grace found herself feeling alone. She confided in her hairdresser, admitting how much her husband's affairs hurt her. According to biographer Wendy Lee, she said, "I know my husband has affairs with other women. That's very frustrating to me and makes me very unhappy." Rainier's actions weren't just personal betrayals. They were public humiliations. He surrounded himself with questionable people, adding to the decadence of the palace. Grace tried to keep up appearances, but the gossip spread fast. The image of the perfect princess was already beginning to crack. What should have been the happiest time of her life was instead filled with disappointment. While Grace suffered in silence, rumors spread that she might have found her own way to get back at Rainier. In 1956, she starred alongside Frank Sinatra in High Society. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, but many believed something was happening off-screen as well. Sinatra had been fascinated by Grace for years. They first met during the filming of Mogambo in 1953, when he was still married to Ava Gardner. By the time High Society began filming, Sinatra was single, and Grace was in a troubled marriage. Reports claim they exchanged coded letters using Grace's chauffeur as a messenger. Some dismissed the rumors, including co-star Celeste Holm, who insisted Grace saw Sinatra as nothing more than a street kid. But others on set saw the way Sinatra looked at her. He was completely smitten. Many believed he would have pursued an affair if given the chance. Whether anything actually happened remains unknown. But for Grace, Sinatra's admiration may have been a welcome distraction from her unhappy reality. As the years passed, Grace longed to return to acting. In 1962, Alfred Hitchcock offered her the lead role in Marnie, a film that could have marked her Hollywood comeback. After 6 years as Princess of Monaco, she was excited. Hitchcock believed she was perfect for the role. She even announced her return publicly. But not everyone supported her decision. The people of Monaco were outraged. Their princess playing a troubled woman with a dark past, they didn't approve. Rainier was even more furious. He reportedly called acting whorish and demanded she back out. According to some accounts, he even burned Hitchcock's script in front of her. Hitchcock tried to make compromises, changing parts of the script to ease Monaco's concerns, but in the end, it wasn't enough. Grace wrote him a letter in June 1962, apologizing and withdrawing from the project. Hitchcock was devastated. He shelved the film for a time before casting Tippi Hedren instead. Marnie could have been a defining moment in Grace's career, but it never happened. The lost role showed just how much control Rainier had over her life. By 1966, after a decade of unhappiness, Grace considered leaving Rainier for good. She reportedly spoke to a lawyer in the United States about divorce. But then she learned the harsh truth. Under Monaco's Napoleonic code, fathers were favored in custody battles. If she left, she would likely lose her 3 children: Caroline, born in 1957, Albert, born in 1958, and Stephanie, born in 1965. For Grace, there was no choice. She had already given up her career, her independence, and her happiness. Losing her children was something she couldn't bear. She stayed, not for Rainier, but for them. Grace Kelly's life ended in tragedy on September 13, 1982. She was driving with her 17-year-old daughter, Princess Stephanie, on a winding road near La Turbie, Monaco. They were heading from their summer home at Rock Aigle back to the palace. The car, a 1971 Rover P6, suddenly veered off course and plunged 120 feet down a rocky slope. The crash was devastating. Stephanie managed to escape, but Grace was critically injured and unconscious when help arrived. Speculation about what had happened spread quickly. Some believed Stephanie had been driving even though she was underage and unlicensed. A gardener who arrived at the scene claimed he had pulled her from the driver's side. But years later, she explained that the crash had crushed the passenger door, forcing her to climb out through the driver's side. In the weeks before the accident, Grace had complained of headaches and exhaustion. Investigators later discovered that she had suffered a stroke while driving, which likely caused her to lose control. Witnesses believed she may have mistaken the accelerator for the brake during the episode. Grace was rushed to Monaco Hospital, but doctors struggled to diagnose her condition. The facility lacked advanced equipment, delaying crucial tests. A CAT scan later revealed that she had suffered 2 strokes, one before the accident and another possibly triggered by the crash. She never regained full consciousness. On September 14, 1982, she was declared brain dead. Prince Rainier III made the painful decision to remove her from life support. She was 52 years old. Her final moments were heartbreaking. Just before slipping into a coma, she reportedly whispered 2 words to Rainier: "I'm sorry." No one knows exactly what she meant, but those words stayed with him for the rest of his life. On September 18, 1982, the world said goodbye to Grace Kelly. Her funeral took place at Monaco's Cathedral of Our Lady Immaculate, the same place where she had married Rainier in 1956. Hollywood stars like Cary Grant and European royals like Princess Diana attended. Rainier, known for his strong public image, broke down several times during the ceremony. Determined to protect her dignity, he banned media coverage inside the cathedral and allowed only close friends and family to attend her burial in the private crypt beneath the chapel. After her death, Rainier took steps to control how Grace would be remembered. Her personal diaries, which contained details about her life in Hollywood and Monaco, were allegedly burned at his request. Over time, her image as a princess was carefully shaped, with less focus on her career as an actress. While Monaco's official history emphasized her royal duties and charitable work, her legacy in Hollywood remained just as strong. Her passing also led to tensions within her family. Her 3 children, Princess Caroline, Prince Albert II, and Princess Stephanie, disagreed on how to honor her memory. Although details of their disputes remained private, it was clear that each had a different vision of her legacy. Years later, Albert acknowledged how much she had sacrificed for them, saying, "She sacrificed everything for us." In 2016, Albert bought Grace's childhood home in Philadelphia. He wanted to preserve her American roots and considered turning the house into a museum or foundation office. Caroline often spoke about her mother's influence on their values and upbringing, while Stephanie, despite facing her own struggles after Grace's death, helped keep her legacy alive through the Princess Grace Foundation USA. In 2014, Grace of Monaco was released with Nicole Kidman in the lead role. The film aimed to capture a defining moment in Grace Kelly's life, when she was torn between her Hollywood past and her responsibilities as Princess of Monaco. The story takes place in the early 1960s, during a political crisis between Monaco and France. But instead of being celebrated, the film became known for all the wrong reasons. Critics slammed it for historical inaccuracies, and the royal family of Monaco openly condemned it. Before the movie even hit theaters, Prince Albert II and his sisters, Princess Caroline and Princess Stephanie, made their feelings clear. In January 2013, they released a statement calling the film a rewritten and needlessly glamorized version of their mother's life. They pointed out several mistakes, including a key moment where Grace's speech at a Red Cross ball is shown as the reason Monaco's tax dispute with France was resolved. Historians have confirmed this never happened. The real solution came through a tax deal negotiated by Prince Rainier III. The trouble didn't end there. Behind the scenes, the film's director, Olivier Dahan, clashed with U.S. distributor Harvey Weinstein over the final cut. Dahan accused Weinstein of blackmail, and the conflict led to multiple versions of the movie being produced. In the end, Grace of Monaco never made it to theaters in the U.S. Instead, it was released on Lifetime, where it was met with harsh reviews. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 9% approval rating. Critics called it shallow and historically misleading. Despite its star-studded cast and glamorous setting, the movie failed to honor either Grace Kelly's legacy or the truth. While Grace of Monaco painted a polished version of Grace's life, biographer Wendy Lee told a very different story. In 2007, she released True Grace, The Life and Death of an American Princess, a book that revealed the struggles behind Grace's public image. According to Lee, Grace's marriage to Prince Rainier III was far from the fairy tale people imagined. Rainier had multiple affairs, and Grace, feeling isolated, reportedly turned to prescription pills for comfort. Lee also explored Grace's past relationships before marriage. She had been linked to several famous men, including Ray Milland, Bing Crosby, Gary Cooper, and even the Shah of Iran. But when it came to Rainier, their union seemed more like a carefully arranged deal than a passionate romance. Lee suggested that Grace married him not for love, but for security after years in the unpredictable world of Hollywood. Rainier, on the other hand, needed a glamorous wife to boost Monaco's image. Their marriage had strict conditions. Grace had to give up acting forever, and her family was required to pay a $2 million dowry. One of Lee's most shocking claims was that Grace felt trapped in the marriage. Monaco's laws at the time would have made it nearly impossible for her to take her children if she chose to leave Rainier. If true, This meant that even if she had wanted to walk away, she had little choice but to stay. Beyond her personal struggles, declassified FBI files show that the U.S. government had concerns about Grace Kelly's life after she became Princess of Monaco. The documents reveal that American officials worried about the level of control Monaco's royal family had over her. In 1973, she invited acting FBI Director L. Patrick Gray to a celebrity gala for a drug education program. It seemed like a simple event, but it caught the attention of U.S. intelligence. Officials questioned how much freedom she actually had as a princess. The files also highlight Monaco's role as a tax haven during the 1960s. France saw this as a major problem, which led to tensions with Prince Rainier III's government. U.S. intelligence kept a close watch on these developments. There were even rumors that Grace was under surveillance, with some fearing she might be unknowingly involved in political or financial dealings beyond her control. These records suggest that even in royalty, Grace was not free from outside scrutiny. In recent years, Grace Kelly's story has been re-examined from a feminist perspective. For decades, she was celebrated for her beauty and grace. But many now see her transition from Hollywood actress to princess as a reflection of how society forced women to give up their ambitions for marriage. She was only 26 years old when she walked away from a successful film career to become a royal. At the time, it was seen as a grand love story. Today, it raises questions about the choices women were expected to make. Even as Princess of Monaco, Grace's role was mostly symbolic. She was deeply involved in philanthropy, but she had little real influence in the country's government. Biographers like Lee have pointed out that Monaco's divorce laws heavily favored men. This meant that if Grace had ever wanted to leave, she would have faced enormous legal obstacles.